Hey there, welcome to day 7 of the Get Up and Go Challenge. Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. I am your host or hostess for this challenge. And today we are going to talk about, yesterday we went through the long version of the pivot process, right? The change process, the challenge process. Today we are going to go through the KISS, the Keep It Simple, Sweetheart, version of the pivot process. Or I'm going to say kiss the PP, but I thought I'd get in trouble. So, the pivot process, the short version of that, we take that 10 or so steps and we break it down to 6. Why 6? Because we humans can remember anything less than 7. That's why phone numbers are 7 digits, right? Well, they're more than that now, but that's because we needed more phone numbers. Everybody's got phones nowadays, cell phones. But we're going to go ahead and talk about the short version of the pivot process. Now, I've got this written in 2 different ways. One is, and I'll share both of these as pictures. One is, you can see it, the challenge process, and of course it's backwards, sorry, as a circular thing because it is a process, so we repeat, right? A process means we're going to do it more than once. We always document processes and things that we're going to do more than once. And this other one is just a linear format of it. Again, I'll share a picture of each of these, and I will probably create a workbook after the fact and have a graphic designer or somebody with some vision and some skills clean these up for me, because these are actually the same models that I've been using for decades. I want to say centuries, but I'm not that old yet. But for decades, they're the same models I've been using. And they probably are an expanded version of Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is one of the first frameworks I've ever learned. And I realized the power of 4. And if I could break this down, and I probably could break this down to 4, I'd probably make it a 4-step process, because that's something that's on one hand and we can remember it, and things that we remember we tend to use and we refer to because they get locked into us because we use them over and over and over again. And I want to see you do that with this process. All of us have spent our entire lives dealing with changes, dealing with challenges, overcoming obstacles, solving problems. And we all have a way of doing it. We discussed that a couple of days ago. What is your way of, how flexible are you was one of the days. How do you personally adjust to and react to change and challenges? And I shared that I used to not be so awesome with change and challenges, right? I would create something and I wanted it to stay the same over and over again. Well, that's not possible, right? Because the things around us, our environment, the world, everything is always changing, and we either change along with it or we deteriorate and we fall behind. I say, let's change along with it and figure out where we fit in the new world order, the new system, the new paradigm, the new way things work, right? And let's make sure we're designing things the way we want them to work. So let's just run through this model quickly. And then of course your action item today is going to be to take a challenge that you're currently facing, and don't take the whole pandemic as the challenge you're currently facing. Break it down into something manageable that you can do something with now. So you're going to ask yourself, what is the next thing that I need to do right now? What is the current biggest challenge I'm facing? And you'll run it through this model. So maybe you just lost your job last week and you're like, hey, I was living paycheck to paycheck. My biggest challenge is I got to figure out how I'm going to put food on the table and feed my family. And then you'll go through the model using that scenario. Maybe your biggest challenge is you're worried about your health. You're concerned about your health. You're in the high risk group like I happen to be. And what do you need to do physically immediately to ensure your safety? And you can work through this with that model. And I've had to do that too. I've had to do both those things. Maybe your business is shut down right now by government mandate for your area, your geographic area. And so you're like, okay, my business is shut down right now. My livelihood has been extremely chopped off. What, based on that, is the thing I need to do next? Maybe you've taken care of your mortgage. You've contacted your mortgage lender, so you know that you can add those mortgage payments to the end of whenever this all shakes out. And so that's not your biggest concern anymore. Now your biggest concern is, what am I going to do? What do I need to do to communicate with my people in the meantime? Or maybe your biggest concern is, what do I personally need to do to prepare for the changes that are inevitably going to have to come after this? And you can run through the process with that in mind. So pick something. You'll pick one thing and you'll do it. But let's talk about what the simplified process is first. Of course, the first step of anything is there's a change, there's a challenge, there's a situation, there's an obstacle, there's a problem that came up, and you identify and you notice and are aware of the problem, right? That's your absolute positive first step. And the second step is, and whenever there's a challenge, I say start with the end in mind. Think about, again, the end result that you want. So here's the challenge. I lost my job. End in mind, I want to make sure that I can get a job equal or better when we end this pandemic. When we come out of this, I want to make sure that I can either get my old job back, or what if I could actually get something better? And if I want to get something better because I didn't love my job, then I want to say, hey, I want to get something better. Sorry about the alarm. I have alarms still set. That would be something that I could change today, right? I can turn off all my old alarms because my time frame and my schedule is way different than it was before COVID-19. So first step, identify where you are, what the situation is, what's changed, and then what you want, right? What do I want given this situation? Then you're going to assess where are you at right now? What is going on in your life? And then what is the highest priority? What is the biggest thing? Or with respect to this thing that you've already picked out as the biggest thing, where are you personally? Because we don't care about how everybody else is doing, right? Or we shouldn't care about how everybody else is doing. What we need to care about and focus on is our own current situation, the only one we can actually affect and impact, right? We can't do stuff for everybody else until we take care of ourselves. So we're going to look at our current situation. We're going to assess, okay, where are we? So the first step is to notice that there's a change or a challenge or a problem or a situation that you need to make and take some action on, right? If it's something that you can just ignore and let shake out by itself, then forget the whole challenge process or the pivot process. You don't need to do it at all. But if it's something that you need to take action or should take action on, then you want to hop into this process. So first you figure out what the change is. You notice there's a change. What do you want? Second, where are you at right now? So you can compare where you are right now versus what you want. And then you're going to start filling in the gap, right? This process is all about how do you fill in the gap? How do you get from A to B? How do you get from A to Z? How do you get from, I always say just go A to B. Take it up one step at a time. Don't try to go from A to Z. Try to go from maybe A to H, right? You can go to A to H, but you're probably not going to be able to go to A to Z in one full cycle. So, you know you've got a problem. The challenge has come up. You know what you want. You know where you are versus what you want. Now you can start looking at options and ways to fill in that gap. What are the possibilities? That's step 3. What are the options? What else is possible? One of my favorite questions in the whole wide world is, what else is possible, and what can I do right now? What's my next step? What can I do right now? And you're going to look at those options, and you're going to analyze them, and you're going to do a little research to see what's possible. And then you're going to pick one. You're going to pick one thing, right? Because we can only really do one thing at a time, and we only know if something worked if we change it one thing at a time. I take a lot of vitamins and a lot of nutritional supplements. You know, after you drop dead, you tend to change the way you eat and move and take care of yourself. And part of that was I experimented over the last decade with all different types of vitamins and nutritional supplements and green drinks and bulletproof coffee, still one of my favorite things, and all kinds of things. And I had to test and see how they impacted my body. Now, when I first started doing that, I tested a whole bunch of things at once. And sometimes I feel worse and sometimes I feel better. But since I was testing all kinds of things at once, I had no idea what was messing me up and what was helping me. So I blew up that process and I said, okay, every good science kid in grade school learns that to test something and to figure out what's working and what's not, you have to test one thing at a time. So then I started testing one different supplement, one different vitamin at a time, and then seeing how it impacted me. And so I figured out what does work for me and what doesn't. Because guess what? They all say they work for everybody, right? Everybody should take vitamin C. Everybody should take vitamin E. Everybody should take vitamin D3. You know, all the information out there, and we each still need to figure out what works for us. And that's how I did it with figuring out for my health what nutritional supplements and vitamins I needed to take. But I had to stop and test them one at a time. And then you see what the results are. If I tested a new version of what's something, CoQ10, and I felt better, then I would maybe substitute and I would take that version of CoQ10. If I tested it and it made me feel worse or no different, then I would just stick with what I was doing and I would try something else. So that's the 4th and 5th process, is we test something and we notice the results. Do we feel better or do we feel worse? And it's always, how do we actually feel? That's the true indicator of the result. We can do all kinds of complicated systems and measurements and numbers and things, and I do that depending on what the problem or the challenge is when it's appropriate. But when you have a choice between a simple method and a complicated one, go for the simple one, because you'll actually do the simple thing. You'll do the simple things 10 times faster than you'll ever do the more complicated things. So figure out what works, figure out what the result was. If it works, maybe you want to automate that process and take it. Let's use the vitamin example still, since I'm going through that. So if I find a CoQ10 that works really well for me, now I'm going to put that in my little weekly pill box. You know, I do the little pill box, and I'm going to take it at probably the same time every day. I learned that with, I take a medication, one pharmaceutical called metoprolol, and I used to take it first thing in the morning. It's a time-release beta blocker. It's a beta blocker. I had a sudden cardiac arrest, so I need to take a beta blocker, according to the physicians. So I took, and I actually tested and experimented with this, by the way, which was a bad thing. It was a bad test. I actually increased my blood pressure through the roof, and it's really bad. It turns out that when you stop taking this beta blocker, it can really do bad things to your blood pressure. But I figured out that I used to take it every morning, and then one of my sisters stayed with me for a couple of months when my dad was ill and dying, and she said, "Oh my God, you are a heinous bitch whenever you take your medicine." Well, I was mostly by myself and with pets, so I never realized that it was making me super duper moody and upset unnecessarily. And so all I did was I tested taking it at night when I went to bed. So then the major, mood enhancing side effects from that drug, the way they impacted me, I slept through most of them. And so just that little changing the time of day that I took that one medication, made a huge difference in a lot of areas in my life. My business relationships, my family relationships, all of my relationships, because I wasn't a moody, grumpy, don't know why I'm flying off the handle biatch just because of when I was taking it. So we can use this for absolutely everything and anything in our life, right? Any process, any change that we're thinking about, we can run through this process and actually test it and figure out what works for us and what's best for us. That's the secular one. The other one's pretty much the same. It's just a linear one where you ask yourself, you face a change, some challenge, something that you need to pivot or make a change, because a pivot is just a change, right? Maybe it's a change and you're going to use a different tool. Maybe it's you're going to take a different vitamin. Maybe it's you're going to communicate differently in your relationship. Whatever the change is, you run it through this process to see if it's going to get you toward what you want or not. So again, I will share this one. It's, what do you want? What is it that you don't like? What's the problem or obstacle? Then you ask yourself, what's your position? Where are you now? What's my position with respect to this challenge or this obstacle? What's the current situation? Third, you ask yourself, what are the possibilities? And you look at in your research and you find out, well, what else is possible? What are the alternatives? Then you take action. You pick a step, you pick a thing to test, and you test it. You actually implement it and you try it, right? Then you see what happened. Well, what the heck happened? That's the results phase. And if it moves you toward what you want, it's positive, and you decide if you want to automate that or not, or if you want to continue and take it further and test something else. And then you just repeat this over and over again. Our life is cycles, right? This is not the first and last challenge we will ever face, so we might as well have a process for how we control the way we deal with challenges and pivots and change and obstacles and whatever you want to call them, because we're going to continue to get them no matter where we are in our life. And it's how we approach them, how we choose to look at them and see them and manage them on our own and be proactive, that's going to determine the results that we get. So that is our process for today. It's a simplified version of the pivot process. So today, again, I mentioned that our assignment is to use this process, pick one thing in your life that is in your face right now and is a challenge for you. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's your relationships, maybe it's that you've lost your job, maybe it's that your business is shut down, whatever. It doesn't have to be a big one. Pick anything. Maybe it's, what's for lunch. My challenge is what's for lunch, and then go through the process and figure out what you're going to eat for lunch today. Or whatever. It can be, you can use it on any type of a situation, right? That seems like it's a challenge for you. For some people, I have relatives that don't cook at all. I wonder and they can go to get drive-through, right? Still, but I wonder, what are they doing right now when they can't go out to lunch every day? That's probably a big question for a lot of people right now. Hey, I don't know how to cook. What am I going to have for lunch? What have I got in the pantry? I don't want to go out to the store, but if I have to, what do I need to do to prepare to go out to the store? So that is our challenge for today. Do this. Once you master this, it becomes automatic. I don't sit and think through each one of these process steps unless it's a really big problem and I want to write it down anymore. It's just automatic for me. Something comes up, I deal with it, challenge. And it's big things and little things. The other day, my granddaughter was having a meltdown. I hang out with my 4-year-old granddaughter during COVID-19 this year. And I said I would watch her this year while she was in day school. You know, she goes to day school 3 hours a day, but I would watch her this year so her parents didn't have to worry about daycare. And it's super duper fun for me. Well, with COVID-19, now I have her all day, every day, Monday through Friday, which is, again, still super duper fun for me. But every once in a while, I don't know if you're aware, but 4-year-olds will have little meltdowns. So my phone rang the other day, and I answered it. It was one of my sisters, and my granddaughter decided it wasn't the time I should answer the phone. So she's trying to bite me. She's trying to bite my stomach. She's trying to bite my arm because she wants my attention. And so that would be a situation, something like that we can use. Okay, here's the challenge. My 4-year-old granddaughter is biting me when I'm trying to talk on the phone. So I hung up for my sister, and of course I paid attention to and walked my granddaughter unknowingly through this process of what's a better way to get grandma's attention than trying to bite her, because if you bite people, you will get expelled from your school once you go back to school. So we use that as a whole learning loop lesson for her. So it's not just applicable for how do we solve problems in our life or challenges in our life. It's how do we live our lives on a daily basis? How do we be proactive and be leaders in our own families? That's it. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Otherwise, I will be with you tomorrow for another day of our Get Up and Go challenge. Because guess what? As frozen as we might feel sometimes, we have to get up and go because there's always something that we can do. And if we're doing what we can do, then we're back in control. And to me, that feels good. All right, catch you tomorrow. Bye.